I'm the new VP of Sales and Ops. I'm out in Denver, relocating here to Chicago soon. But it's nice to officially meet many of you in person. I know I see some familiar faces, but some new ones as well. So nice to meet everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Today, we're going to be talking about some social media marketing opportunities, as well as contract changes that Austin's going to dive into at the end of the presentation. So I'm going to kick us off with social media. I like to make these kind of an open discussion. Oh, if I can get it to change. There you go. Thanks. So how many of you guys are on social media right now? Okay, perfect. Where are you guys on social media? Because social media is, it's a big umbrella. So what are you guys currently using? Instagram, Facebook. Sorry, I can't hear you. Oh, okay, that's a new one. I don't use them. LinkedIn, that's a great one. Perfect. Are those good? Are you guys seeing good traction on those? Okay, perfect. And I think it's interesting to think about, you know, the intention behind each platform, right? And age groups on each platform. You know, we were just talking about this in a meeting yesterday. Instagram, TikTok, that has some of the younger generations, Gen Z, future buyers. And then, you know, other platforms have older generations. And I think it's important to make sure that your brand and you are portrayed on all of those, because you don't want to miss, even though one of them might be more your clientele, it's a good opportunity to kind of steer in the younger platforms as well. But today I selected just a couple to review. How many of you guys are on Google? Perfect. That Google is, as we all know, the #1 search platform for brands and businesses. Google is now a verb. Google it. You know, if you want to find it, Google it. You want reviews, Google it. So it has 90% of the SEO or search engine market share. So if you're not on Google, you're missing a really good opportunity to get in front of potential buyers. So one of the reasons or benefits that I recommend creating a Google business profile, if you haven't already, it's super easy. If you don't know how to do it and you need the steps, Google it. But it really helps, like I said, customers find you. It's if you have a client, for example, that's on the defense or is trying to pick between two agents, if you say, hey, why don't you Google Kim Larson, Denver Realtor, Kim Larson Realtor, you'll find reviews and make your decision that way. Or we'll talk a little bit about other ways you can leverage it, because it's great that you have a business profile, but I'm curious how you're using it. And also another benefit that I want to mention is I have so many agents coming to me and asking, how do I get myself out there for cheap? The internet, it's free. It's the easiest thing. Yes, you can do direct mail. Yes, you can do all these other things. You know, create door hangers, leave them at doors when you go door knocking. All of that is great, and you should put in the effort to do those things. But you can do this while you're sitting at home. If you're, it's easy. If you're watching a movie or you're bored at home late at night, do a quick post. It takes 5-10 minutes. It's a lot of work setting it up initially, but once it's set up, a post can take you 5 seconds. It's so easy. It just requires consistency. Google business page. Some of the things that you must have, I know some of you already have it, but we're going to just quickly go over these for those that don't have a Google business profile. You need to have a professional headshot. Please don't take a selfie and post it on here. We do complimentary headshots here, so come get one. Make sure that that is the first impression that you're giving your clients or potential clients a very professional and clean photo of yourself. I would include not the office phone number, your personal phone number on your Google page. That way they're coming directly to you. Your office address, some people set their personal home address, that's fine. I personally did not want people knowing where I live, so I put my office phone number, and this is an important step in creating a Google profile. Google verifies that you're actually a business, like you're saying that you are. So they send you a postcard in the mail. It takes about 7 days. And it has a code that you need to type in to verify that your location is where you're staying.
So if we get something at the front desk,
Yep.
we'll send it to you guys.
Yep.
Right, so if we see it, you kind of know what they look like, we'll give you guys a heads up if it comes in.
Yeah, I mean, and also if you guys do request or set it up, give us a heads up that it's coming. We'll keep an eye out for it.
Well, I think you can do it to your home address too. If you want.
You could do it to your home address, but
Market that you want to work primarily more.
yep.
It may make more sense to do it at your home address. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, but if you're, you know, a female, I would recommend, you know, doing it to the home address just for security reasons.
To the office.
Sorry, to the office is what I said, or meant to say, not your home address.
I was trying to do that one time.
Yep.
And they said I needed to make a video of where the location, the business address is, to go walk the block, take
A picture, yeah.
picture.
Yep.
And walk into the office and take a picture.
That might have,
Is
that might have changed. I do remember that Google asked for a picture to verify the front of it. But this is the first I'm hearing of a video, so that may have changed, but that,
I can speak to that a little bit.
Yeah.
If you're using a residential address, Google is gonna do everything in their power not to let you create a business account. But eventually, at some point, sometimes they ask you to take a video, sometimes they ask you to take pictures, sometimes they
Pictures.
mail something.
yep,
And it's kind of random as to what they decide. And then sometimes they kick you back to like a support person, you can call them, and if you call them, they'll override it. And so what I did was I tried with like 3 different emails over the course of a month until, for a residential address, until one of them kicked it back and said yes, but it took a few tries. So if you're using a residential address, I just encourage you to keep trying and keep telling Google, no, this is a real business, because eventually they'll say yes because somebody's not paying attention or doesn't care.
yeah.
But it's gonna take a few tries.
Yeah.
It took me quite a few.
I would say that was the hardest part of getting it set up, was just verifying it
Totally.
initially. Everything else was pretty simple.
So should we use the office?
Yeah.
I would prefer to use.
Yeah. I personally would use the office address over any personal one.
Oh.
Yep, and when you do, just, you know, email the front desk and let us know that you used it, and to keep an eye out for postcards that we might receive.
Great.
That way it doesn't get thrown out or the front desk doesn't get confused.
We can have a video.
Yeah. It's a little bit of a pain, but at the same time, it's great that Google has those measures to make sure that, you know, the Google business pages are verified.
The only caveat I might mention is that depending on the submarket you wanna build, the leads you get are gonna be generally speaking geographically connected, at least for me.
Yep.
The leads I've gotten have been geographically connected to the location of the office. So if there's a market you wanna build, I would encourage you to try and have your Google profile linked to something in that neighborhood. So if you don't wanna build right here in West Town, or Noble Square, like maybe partner with a different business to use their address, something like that.
But there's also ways around that. Yeah, with SEO, and there's ways that you can put service areas in. So what Aaron is referring to is sometimes when you put your address in, the office address, it's gonna pick up when people Google businesses near me easier than if you were, you know, a business an hour and a half away, right? So, but we'll get into ways around that here in a second. But something that I've learned just from coaches is tagging your business profile with real estate agency. It just helps with the SEO. They have real estate agent, but real estate agency seems to be the best tag. And then add the areas, like I mentioned, that you service. I have about like 8 different areas on mine. And that kind of helps with the search. So if someone says top realtor in Littleton or top realtor, and I'm just saying Denver areas because I'm still new to Chicago, but you know, top realtor in Denver or Castle Rock, I'm going to pop up because I have those tags. So put as many as Google will allow that you service and that you're willing to drive to, and you'll pop up. And then products. So products is a big one. Not very many people know about that. Let me see if I can change to.
Come on.
There we go. So I'm just gonna show my profile really quick. Products, not very many people use this, but I still need to do a slightly better job with my pictures here. But products, I would essentially build these out to whatever you want to offer your clients. You can do a buyer one and a seller one. You could do free CMA or buyer consults. You could do a free home evaluation, whatever product you want to give your clients, you have to have it bucketed here because that will help when people search. And then you can click in and have videos, you can have flyers, you can have anything else. But that's a,
What's the Google to get it? Just your name?
yeah, just my name, Kim Larson, yeah. And I've had conversations when I've been in a listing presentation before where I'll get into this later, but I've said, hey, at the end of this, Google Kim Larson Realtor and see what pops up. And when they do that, they'll get my Zillow, they'll get my Google, they'll get this one, don't ignore that one. I have no 1-star review, or Facebook is reporting it incorrectly and Google won't take it down. It's a whole thing. Yeah, Facebook says email Google, Google says email Facebook, and I can't figure it out. But anyways, so they look at Zillow, Rate My Agent, Redfin, all of Homes.com when they search that. So another thing that I recommend is photos. Photos and videos are so important. So I have my professional headshot as the first thing. Then I have little videos here for people to look at, commercials. I have homes that I've closed to show, and I try to steer to higher price points. So I try and highlight some of the bigger listings that I've had first, so people can see the type of homes that I've worked with. Instagram videos that I've done, I've posted on here. So I'm not replicating, this is not extra work. I know people look at this and they're like, oh, I have to create this. These are photos my photographers took. I just clicked the mouse and dragged it and added it to my profile. I didn't go out and do these, except for that one during the showing. I was like, I need that. So it's in here, I added a photo of me and some clients. So showing that, happy clients. I would really, when it comes to photos, showcase homes that you're proud that you've worked on, higher price points if you can. Photos of you and your clients. I've done housewarming parties. I do that for my sellers. We can talk about that later, but for every seller that I close, I cater a housewarming party for them, and I come to the party and all their friends and I meet them and they introduce, hey, this is the realtor who helped us, get the home, and I get clients from that. So anyways, put those photos in here, show how you go above and beyond with your events, if that's what you do, things like that. So yeah, photos, please put videos. It's so important, especially for people who are steer younger. Another thing that's important that some people don't know about Google profile. Yes, every client that you have should be sent a link after the transaction. There's debate on, which timing is best. You can do it right when they go under contract, and that's when the client is the happiest because they just won that house or their house is now under contract. You can send the review link now and say, hey, I know once we get to closing, life is going to get busy with the move and everything. Could you, fill this out for me now before it gets too busy? And that's when they're already on a high, and that review is going to be the best. Or if you feel like that's a little too ahead of the game, then you can do it towards the end after closing. But every single client should be sent your review link.
Is there a particular form you send them, or do they just talk?
So I send them in an email. I mean, at the closing table, if you wait till the end, at the closing table, I say, hey, it was a pleasure working with you. I'm so happy we were able to get, this home for you or get the deal closed. Can you please do me a favor today? And I say, can you please fill out a review for me? I've never had a client say no. and they do it that day. So, and then I send them an email that says, here's the review link, and they just click it and fill it out. And Google generates that for you. I can help you, once you have it set up, I'll show you where to get it later. But if you have a Google profile and you're not posting updates on your Google profile, you're not taking advantage of the search or SEO. And an update can be found right. Oh no, okay, well, it doesn't show it, but it's basically right here. It won't show it because I'm not logged into my Google profile, but these posts are updates. This is what, these words here is what Google searches and helps locate.
I don't see a mouse.
Oh, right. So if I was logged into my Google profile, which don't worry about it, not worth it, there would be a little button here that says update. You click it and you can post all of these. This is done for me automatically because I have an account on Rate My Agent. I'm not even posting this, but that platform is doing it for me. But what I do post are my social media videos. So, you know, something like this with you know, keywords that I post in here and hashtags. Google says
It's just give me 1 second. Just gonna disconnect it and reconnect it.
okay, well, I'll keep going.
Yep.
So, if you're already posting, and you know, we create content all the time for the holidays. We created a generic holiday post. That static image that Tim created, all you have to do is take it, post it, and put it right here, and put something like, "Happy holidays, everyone, from Kim Larson in Denver." And it, again, Kim Larson, Denver, when people search that, I'm gonna be the first one to pop up and beating my competition. Every time I have a showing, this one was a inspection day. I just took a 3-second video and I posted, you know, if you're in Denver or surrounding areas looking for a good contractor, let me know, stuff like that. Make sure that your messaging is different with every post. And what I mean by that is this one says good contractors. How many people search, look, you know, or good reliable contractors or contractors near me or whatever? Think about that, or home improvements. That's another keyword in here. And I'm gonna pop up just because of this. I've had calls where, true story, I was at the gym just sitting in the sauna and I got a random call saying, "Hey, I found you on Google. I need to sell my house in a week." And I got the job. And I did no work except for posting and doing the initial setup. I didn't have to call 100 people a day to get that deal. I didn't have to, you know, really work at it. I just was leveraging tools available to me. And then another thing that I recommend doing is posting other profiles here. So your social media, in your bio, I would highlight things about you, the areas that you service. If you buy and sell, or if you do rentals only, be specific in this little bio down here. Again, here are all the areas that I service in case people search for that. I speak English and Spanish. I highlight that in there. If you want to highlight the fact that you only do luxury, put it in there. Or if you do a range of prices, put it in there. How many of you guys also have your Calendly, am I saying that right? Calendly link in here. So if someone finds you, they can set up an account or set up a meeting. No? So I would create this again, super easy. This Calendly link should be on your Google profile, all your social media. This could even be in your email signature. And it basically, if you click it.
Just so you guys know, on our agent center, any of you guys can book time with us. And instead of having to call us, see when I'm available, wait for us to get back to you, see if that works for your time, well, no, actually, you know, that avoids that back and forth. You can book time with me, Kim, Gabriella, or Jenny, all right through our agent center, through Calendly.
Yeah, so it's basically this. If someone found me, I have it set to times that I'm available and it's linked to my calendar. They just throw in a meeting invite and I see it pop up and I just I attend the meeting. But most people call. So just make sure that if you get a random phone call, answer your phones, because that's probably a lead that's calling you when you're in the sauna and you don't know the number, right? So I highly recommend that you guys post the updates that I mentioned at least 4 times a week. If you can start smaller, but 4 times a week really, really helps, especially when you're starting from a weaker SEO perspective to build. 4 times a week is good. And again, we have content, generic content, so you don't have to spend the time creating it yourself. You can just use what we have and post it. But again, I would do little clips when you're out doing showings, when you're at a commercial event, or or looking at commercial real estate. If you want to film at home like this, as long as it looks professional, if you maybe get a little stand or a light and post something about, hey, today the interest rates are X, Y, and Z, we're seeing this in the market, post that. And keywords like interest rates, all of that will help.
In my opinion, for the content, I know of some accounts that make hundreds of thousands of dollars
one.
from social
Yeah.
media paying them because they have so many followers and create content that are on pixelated, terrible video, jostled around with the content from within what they're posting is interesting. And that's why they get the eyeballs, that's why they get the followers, that's why they get the people talking about what's going on. There are so many accounts that are faceless accounts that don't show anybody's face, but it's interesting.
There's a guy, Nava Realty, he,
NAVA?
I think so, I'll have to get the correct spelling, but Nava Realty, they have thousands and like over 100,000 followers, and all they do is, go to showings, show the house with a little, what's it called, to keep the camera steady? A gimbal, thank you. Where they go in the house and they just film, here's the master, here's the bathroom. All right, guys, that's the home tour.
But
That's
it's
all
all
they do.
Interesting
Yeah,
houses that
Yeah.
are pre-market
Yeah.
or there's a demand for seeing that type of product, right? It has to be interesting information.
yeah, and the homes are definitely on the luxury market, things that people are excited to see. The dialogue that he's using in the videos, I mean, he's really engaging. He's not even showing himself. So if it's a fear of being in front of the camera, there's ways around that where people don't show their face. They don't talk, they don't write scripts, and they get so much business. But anyways,
Would you put the link to Pearson realistically?
if you don't have your own website, yes, you can put the Pearson website on there.
Vice versa?
So you have your own website through our website that connects
Put the link.
to the CRM and everything.
Yeah.
And if you don't know how to get that, it's your homepage, it looks exactly like it's your page that we create for you. Unless you have your own, we recommend using that one, and it's all right there, built into Pearson's website, everything. So, and it
Yep.
connects to your CRM, if they ask, if they start inputting stuff on this house, it'll show you which houses they looked at, if they inquired about seeing a showing at a certain time, or if they wanted a home valuation, it goes right into there, and it's all through the website that we give you. We recommend that you post out.
Yeah,
Okay.
and when your client leaves you a review, most clients, I try and guide my clients, hey, when you fill out the review, can you please say Kim Larson, Denver Realtor? And then whatever you want to say after that, just for SEO. You can kind of give them guidelines. Most people don't mind, only one person minded. But if they don't use keywords and the review says Kim Larson was great, 100% recommend her. Awesome, that's a great review. I'm glad people are gonna see that, but that doesn't really help me with Google. No one's gonna Google, awesome, and find me, right? It just doesn't work that way. So what I do is I reply to all my reviews. And I say, thank you so much, Erin. I loved working with you. I'm so glad I was able to find you a single family home or a condo high rise in Denver. I can't wait to see what you do with the place. If you need any contractors or remodeling or anything, call me. You know, get creative with it, whatever you want to say. But then your reply gets you exactly what you want. Anyways, so secondary review profiles, that's awesome that you guys have Google business pages. Hopefully you can take some of these tips to just optimize your accounts further. And again, the 3 to 4 posts, if you can, if that sounds, just do once a week. But the consistency of it, I swear people will start to find you and you will go from page 20, eventually to page 1.
Did you just say that by responding to a generic review and using certain keywords in your response to that review helps people find you?
Helps SEO, correct. So, and I recommend responding to every single review. So I have 34. It was a pleasure working with you. I said, I enjoyed helping you and your wife purchase a brand new luxury mountain home in Golden, Colorado. That brand new luxury home and blah, 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 blah. That is what's going to help you. So just get creative. But yeah, every single, not only is it nice when someone leaves you a review and you can't wait to respond and then they see your thank you for responding, but the more words that you put in your Google profile, the better. Anyways, let's keep going. So hopefully you guys can create the products page, add your Calendly link, make sure your bio is good, rewrite it. You have Googled yourself? Good.
And when it comes up, that's what you should think about. Sometimes people don't realize that the realtor.com profile comes up like
Share,
third
slideshow.
and it's blank.
Okay,
Nobody
thanks.
updates the realtor.com.
Thank God you're here.
Think about that.
Cool.
Think about that.
Okay, and a good point is Google yourself. Make sure your Zillow profile is also optimized. Your headshots in there, you're just copy and paste the same bio if you don't want to rewrite another one into Zillow. And get reviews because you want Google reviews. You want Google and Zillow, in my opinion, to be where your reviews are the most. You don't have to only use them, but most people look at their home values on Zillow. How many times do we say, oh, well, Zillow says my home is worth this. So make sure you're getting reviews on Zillow and Google because Google's where they're searching and that's the best. But I have Google or Zillow homes.com profile, which homes.com is growing fast. I love homes.com.
I used to like Snap.
Yeah. HomeSnap is good. That's gone. Yeah, HomeSnap is dead. Or it's dying. But yeah, homes.com is great. The amount of neighborhood content and videos, I have people, strangely enough, like maybe it's from my Google profile, but I have so many people from out of state coming to Denver that have found me through my platforms. And homes.com, when they're like, I don't know what neighborhoods, can you send me information of neighborhoods or areas? Homes.com has done all of that for me. I just send them a video of my homes.com profile with videos of the neighborhood and it looks like I created that and I didn't. So yeah, homes.com, recommend that. Everything is free. Create Rate My Agent. I like Rate My Agent too, mainly because it automatically posts those updates I was telling you about. It automatically posts those for me. You can link it to your Google profile. Every time you have a closed sale, every time a client leaves a review, it's automatically just putting that through your Google profile. And
They leave a review on Rate My Agent.
so both, because they're both connected. I do. So I like to alternate. So I send them, I like to do Google first. And then my next client, I might send them to Rate My Agent. And then my third client, depending how I feel, I might send them to Zillow. And I just try and keep those 3 growing.
Rate My Agent picks everything up.
Yes, Rate My Agent picks everything up. So if someone leaves you a review on Rate My Agent, it'll show at the bottom where your updates are, kind of where I showed you earlier. It'll show the review on it. So everything will be posted, and then when you post on your Google business page, when you go to rate my agent and someone looks at you there, you're gonna see all your Google reviews and all your rate my agent reviews. So they'll show all the different platforms where people are talking about you and you're looking good. You had a question?
Yeah, so if you have some already on Zillow, are you able to do that through Google or is that?
Zillow's weird.
Yeah.
Zillow doesn't like playing with other people. Yeah, so probably, but Zillow, when I started using it or like really building this out, they were limiting. Zillow, for me personally, it's not as reliable as Rate My Agent. It doesn't have my closed sales accurate for some reason, but when I last played with it, no. Has something changed? Maybe. But all the other ones like to showcase on each other. It makes sense. Okay, so anyways, like I said, I know all of this is a lot of work, and I know a lot of you are looking like, oh, damn, do I really have to set all of this up? It's worth it, it really is, because the level of effort after you do the initial setup just decreases. And then, so again, how to leverage, so let's pretend you have all of this set up and you're using it and great, and you're sending review links to your clients, that's great. But in my opinion, that's kind of like, once you've set it up, the bare minimum that you could be using your platforms for. What I do is, let's say I have a list of cold calling I'm gonna do, of look for sellers in a neighborhood, right? I have a list of everyone in Banana Street, yeah, you know, 20 homes. Let's say one of those answers and I have a good conversation with them. I always say, hey, I would love to send you something in the mail because I have their address already. It's just a postcard of my past sales and a QR code with review links so you can have a little bit of information about me. Can I send that to you? And I said, I promise I won't spam you with stuff in the mail after that because it's a waste of my money. I'll send you just this first one so you can have, see my reviews and see my profiles. I've always gotten a yes, especially if I say, I promise I'm not gonna send you junk after that, and they laugh. So that is one way you can leverage that. The QR code is super easy, and it just shows that you're kind of with it when it comes to marketing. If you're marketing yourself like that, and I say that to my clients, if you've been impressed with my online presence, with the postcard you got in the mail, imagine what I'm gonna do when you pay me to advertise your house. And I tell them, part of my commission goes behind the marketing dollars for your home. It's included in that. So anyways, another thing that you can do is you have direct mails, like postcards, like I said, you can put your QR code. You can also, in your listing and buyer presentations, I have a page at the very end that says, okay, I talked to you about my strategy, we reviewed the comps, you now know I'm gonna list your home. Here's a little bit about me now. It's time for me to sell myself at the end. And then I have the QR code again, or I just print out the reviews. I've seen people, if they don't like QR code, print out your Zillow profile, just put it in there, Google, you can take a picture, screenshot of your business profile and say, Google this, and this is what it's gonna look like if you're not comfortable with QR codes, but QR codes are the best. Because you do it once and you can put it on everything and it lasts forever. Okay, so I also do this where when I send mass texts out to my database or cold call or whatever it is, if you're doing cold leads or paying for leads, I say, I always every now and then send a review and say, hey, or send a text that says, hey, here's a little information about me. Here's a link to my reviews and past sales if you want to know who I've helped. And then I text that out and it's just a link to these profiles. That's another way. When I'm using social media, a story or a reel, I link my accounts on there too, so people can find it that way. So that's when I talk about leveraging your review profiles, this is what I mean, is taking that step further to make sure that not only are you just setting it and forgetting it, but you're also finding how to use print advertising to drive traffic through there, or your one-on-one face-to-face drive people there, because it just helps your presence. Anyways, okay, so Instagram, like I mentioned earlier, creating a brand for younger generations, millennials and Gen Z. Now that TikTok's going away, maybe I feel like a lot of people are gonna be going back to Instagram. I know it's harder, it's a little bit more saturated, but at the same time, if I'm on there, it's a platform I use. I know that all my friends use it. It would be silly for me not to put my business on there. But yeah, you can link your website on there too in your profile at the bottom, and it just helps boosting sales and driving people to your website. Yep.
I looked into that, doing that, Instagram, and it said you have to be on Facebook to do this.
Yeah.
Maybe I should ask somebody, but I never got the connection to.
They're all owned by the same, like by Meta. So they're all owned by the same.
Yes, well, I guess that's what the mechanics of doing it.
Yeah.
In my ear, like the mechanics of actually.
Yeah, and it's not like you have to, I think it's important to say, yeah, you have all these options, right? But if you want to hone in on one and master one, that could be all you need. You know, you don't feel like you have to go so wide that you're not doing them efficiently now, where if Instagram and Facebook just seems like too tedious, go all in on Google and learn that platform and just use that, and it'll work for you.
It's gonna be the same thing across all platforms. I don't want to do one thing here or another.
Yeah.
thing there. Be consistent.
Yep.
If you want to Al Burns, you're gonna be Al Burns no matter
Yep.
where you sit.
So that having it across all is best, but if you're not consistently posting, if you're not replying to replies and you're just not doing these things consistently, it's actually hurting you. Versus if you, yeah, so you have to be consistent, you have to be using these platforms correctly for it to be worth your time. So if you have 4 of them, but you're posting once every 3 weeks, get rid of them. Do one and post like every week or every several days every week. And that will be better for you in the end.
So how much time do you spend on every week?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's quick. So I've gotten, it's in the very beginning, it required several hours to just set this stuff up. But at the same time, guys, I was the kind of person that I would turn on the TV and instead of just sitting there and being inefficient, I would pull out my laptop and start building my profiles. So I'm already, it's kind of like a chill time of the day to do it. And I'm just trying to be efficient and create these. Or you can just turn everything off, dedicate 3 hours, get this stuff done. And it's going to be a lot of work in the beginning. It really is. You're going to say, screw this, she's crazy. But once it's done, you don't have to write your bio profile on, 4 different places again, once you do it once. It's just the posting for me, now that I've been doing it for this long, takes 15 minutes on everything. But that's not bad. And it's just because I've gotten the hang of it and I've set up a system.
You go by phone, you do it?
No, I don't. I do it on my laptop. Yeah, no, I'm not that good. No, I do it on my laptop, and it really does take 15 minutes after you do all the legwork. And like I said, if you don't feel like you have to do Homes, Zillow, and all this, start with one and get in the rhythm. And once you're like, okay, this is taking me 2 minutes to post, I'm gonna try and build out this other thing, Zillow. And then you start getting the hang of it and you're like, okay, super easy. I see now they're connected. Now it's doing it for me. Cool. Let me see if I can add this 3rd one and then connect them all. And it builds that way. So
You decide you have a set time every week to do this?
yeah, yes, I do. Yeah, so I have a set time, my time block. I learned that for my followers posting I post 4 times a week at 4 p.m. because that's when people are coming off work or starting to come off work and they're like looking on Instagram and going home and just sitting on the couch, taking a breather. That's when I'm getting the most engagement on social media. If I posted at 10 a.m., all the young professionals that follow me, no one's looking at anything because they're at work. Yeah. So I find times in the day to post. And for me, it's the best at 4. Yep.
I find that a lot of Instagram realtor profiles feel like realtor for realtors.
Yep.
Like they have 1,000 followers and they're literally all realtors. what kind of content sings best to people who are actually gonna hire you?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question, and this one, for example, and I'm glad you asked that question. Hey, Ashley Walker, her Instagram, when you look at it, you're gonna say she's for realtors, which she is. The product she's selling is sign up for my program and we will help you create a brand of posting. But her advice is that you come up with your ideal agent. I have her ideal client, excuse me. What I have, since I first started social media, what the advice I've gotten from almost every single person that I've talked to, and I've tried to fight this, is you have to pick your niche. And I was so scared to pick my niche because I'm like, no, I'm gonna sell a house to anyone that wants to, buy. How could I neglect some people? But the people that truly do best on social media have found their niche. I've seen people post things like real estate for moms, or for stay-at-home moms, or whatever it is. They've basically leaving all these other people out and just hone in on a certain group of people, and they've gone crazy on social media. And at the end of the day, they're not just working with moms, but they help build, because they're so loyal on Instagram, they help build that traction. I've seen people who just do listings or just do sellers. For example, her profile says relocating to Denver. So anyone looking to relocate, I promise you, you're not just gonna get that. You're gonna get locals too. Once people see, "Ooh, this person has $60,000 or 60,000 followers," I don't care that she's only working with relos. I'm gonna hire her for my sale. I'm gonna reach out to her. She seems like the real deal. So I think it's first identifying who that person is that you want to work with. Don't be afraid to get really, really specific, and then get in the mindset of what kind of content would this person want to see.
Can I give some ideas?
Yeah.
So. What is some of the most popular TV out there now? Reality TV, right? And
Sunset.
yeah, people want it, but half of what it is, it's not about selling real estate.
No.
It's people wanna know what you go through in your day-to-day basis, selling real estate. And so you have to keep that in mind, that some of that is the interesting stuff that may keep people interest, and obviously you're selling real estate on top of it, you wanna focus on that. We don't wanna create our Instagram profile here about coffee, and it's all about coffee, because it's not what we do, it's about real estate, yes, but. We talk about like what goes through our days in our lives. Selling real estate, right? So think about some of that content. I see some really successful people who, are struggling to catch it. I see some people that are not as successful, and they're only every once in a while posting a property, because there's not a billion properties to be able to post, right? And the people that are doing better are posting more about, oh, I'm getting coffee with the client, or I am touring, or I walked by this one place and I saw it, I'm gonna call them, you know what I mean? And so that may get you better, posting a little bit more about the day in the life of what you're doing may help. For you to A, generate content, but B, engage with more people that are more interested in stuff that's not just real estate, right? Get you followers for people that aren't keen on looking at the listings because they bought last year. And you get followers and they refer you somebody, right?
And just to clarify, the day in the life is best for stories. So hey, go with me to show these homes today, like something like that, or a new coffee shop that I'm trying in an area service, Denver, whatever. You can do things like that, and your followers will really enjoy seeing life stuff. But your posts that you do, like the reels, that needs to speak to your ideal client.
And interconnect them, right? Like, go to my LinkedIn page, like if LinkedIn doesn't have stories, does LinkedIn have stories? Oh, right. I don't think so. So go to my LinkedIn page for this, and you say that on your story, right? And you can interconnect these things to kind of multiply, because I have so many LinkedIn followers. can almost guarantee you that most of them are not my Instagram.
So.
I don't do a good enough job of interconnecting that stuff.
So like, for example, what I would do is if I was going on after luxury, for example, I would post luxury homes walkthroughs, obviously, that's the easy thing. I would make sure that I'm looking the part whenever I'm posting that. But then, for example, I also think, what would people with a certain amount of income, where would they go? What would they do? I might throw an event at Equinox or Soul Cycle or some of those workout areas and post a reel saying, hey, I've seen people do like a nonprofit event where they just rented out a room and they brought their sphere and they just rode bikes together and they took a picture and they made that a post and it's gone viral, and it's stuff that their audience who would like. So you kind of have to get in the mindset, and it, like Austin said, it doesn't have to always be real estate, but I think there's a sweet spot. 80-20 is probably what you want to do. So think that way. And we can brainstorm more, but if you wanted like experts, because like this person here, they offer help with stuff like that. And there's so many tools and companies online that help you come up with content and do research for your audience. Now oh shoot, hold on one second. Another thing I just wanted to show really quick, I have a YouTube channel. Again, YouTube is another search engine. People love long form, really, you show up a lot when you post long form videos. What I've done is I've created a postcard that I've sent out to people in my neighborhood saying, thinking about selling, and it had a QR code and it takes them to this video. And it's me talking about tips for how to sell your home. And it won't play. Where's Tim? Okay. Oh no, why isn't it working? Sorry, guys. Let's see. No. Whatever.
It's a slightly different market, but do you know the account Kyle Silverate?
No.
He posts all about mortgages, but in a very like, this is a clean video, I'm calm. I don't know if you know Jeff Jackson, he's the Attorney General. He does this thing where like all of his videos are like, I'm just here to make sure you understand.
Mhm.
And I'm like here to do it in a efficient way.
Yeah.
And I love the tempo of it. And your video is framed very similar to Kyle's, where all those videos are like, mortgages don't have to be complicated.
Yeah.
Let me take you through them and be
Yeah.
a resource.
Yeah.
And his funnel is very specifically to get people to fill out a form that then he would refer them to a lender and get some sort of a kickback, right? So people
Yeah.
are learning about loans, believe that he can help.
That is key, that is
Yeah.
huge, that is to get them to engage with you. You gotta remember that all
Yeah.
the content that you're posting has to have some sort of, it's great brand building, but at the end of the day, you gotta remember somewhere in there, you gotta have a sign up for this. And to get people to raise their hand every once in a while, a call to action in your marketing at some point in time. So whether you gotta generate interesting content for followers, but then every once in a while, you gotta get them to raise their hand if they really are interested in using your services to generate the leads from that.
Yep. And I'm just gonna go through YouTube really quick in 2 minutes. That's my time. Cut me off if I go over. The YouTube channel, what I did to kind of get started was I texted all of my database when I created my YouTube channel. And I said, hey, I just started this. Can you please give me or subscribe to my channel and give me a follow? This is all my friends, family, and I had to start like 200 to 300 people, which is great. And then from just 200, you could get thousands and thousands and thousands of views to your channel by just a couple follows. And it's super easy and it's exciting because people who know you and may have considered you now are seeing you develop professional things, and you're going to get that deal. Like I gave tips on how to use that in a postcard. I personally love educational videos. It's what I love to do. I enjoy it. So I sit there and I say, here are the tips. Here's what I've done. I've even shared stories where You know, my buyer was a contingent buyer in a market that we had no shot at winning, but we found this one house, and I Googled average days on market. And I said, hey, we will write our contingent offer with an out for the seller for the average days of market. You have nothing to lose because you're probably gonna sit that long anyway. So take our offer now and give us a shot. And it worked. And so I create videos telling people this and and when someone is doubting me in an interview, I say, hey, I'm gonna send you a video on how I helped buyers in a similar situation. Give it a look. People are gonna watch a video before they read anything. And then last thing, oh, and Austin had a great idea that I never thought about doing this, but you can create an intro video. If you're a real estate agent, the first video you should do is an intro video. If you don't have one, do that. You need it really, really bad. So who you are, your brokerage, how long you've been in the business, what areas, like I said, you service, why you do that you do, why you do the things that you do, why you love being in this industry. Think anything that makes you feel, you know, just present yourself. You know, it doesn't have to be too professional. If you're someone who is naturally funny, I should make that come across in the video. This is who you are. You don't want to come off too stiff, and you can put that YouTube video in your email signatures. So when you email any client, anyone in the business, they have a link to that and help generate.
It actually sometimes makes an attachment on the bottom of the email, even though the link is in your email footer, it creates an attachment. But people generally tend to go to open that because there's an attachment on the email, and it gets views, and it's a great start to kind of your video content brand.
Yeah.
We're coming out with building a little bit more of a package and pricing and quoting for you guys. Having, you know, gonna generate more of like an in-house videographer to be able to create a little bit more of this content a little bit easier. Is, you know, hopefully with some economies of scale of us using and ordering more, we'll be able to help provide some discounts to our office. Do, you know, some standardizing of easy helping make some scripts and what's worked in the past, what hasn't, instead of you just, you know, blank sheet of paper, start from scratch, figure it out, you know what I mean?
And Aaron, I think the hardest part for me, because now I have a videographer, I've outsourced that because I'm not going to sit down and spend an hour editing a video. It is the worst. I hate it. Some people are good at it. Awesome. Not for me. So I just show up, do my script, and I leave. And I say, send that video to me in a couple days. That's it. It's well worth the money. Denver. Oh, I don't edit it. No, I don't. No, I just show up, shoot it, and I leave, and I just get it sent to me in an email. That's not my expertise. I'm terrible at that. But I outsource it. I give myself time back to focus on other things, and I would rather spend my time building out my profile and just upload a video than create the video, do this, do that. And there are photographers out there that are really affordable, and there's videographers out there that are just getting into business, wanting to build their, you know, portfolio, and they want to get into real estate. Those are the great ones to work with because they're really, really cheap. You'd be surprised. Anyways, to answer your question really quick about how do I come up with content, I would say out of everything, once you set up, yes, it's a pain. The hardest thing for me is, how do I create content? Where do I get these ideas to speak to my audience? And I think it's kind of a learning process and a kind of an art, but ChatGPT can help with that. And I need to leverage that more with my business. But it's really, you use ChatGPT, the AI, and you say, here's my ideal client. Someone in their 30 to 45, at least making X amount of money, living in these areas, personality like this, or whatever, as much information as specific as you can be. You tell ChatGPT that, and you say, I want to create social media videos about real estate that speaks to selling. Come up with 20 concept ideas, and it does it in 1 second. And so maybe you can take what you like from there and say, hey, I like idea 1, 3, and 5. Create a script, a 20-second script on those, and see what that gets you.
Yeah. Well, I think getting, you know, it's kind of like
push start car, once you get the engine going with the first one, which we all probably know you need to have an about you. Once you get that going and just think about putting yourselves in the shoes of other people in your day-to-day operations, once you get that video. You're not gonna do 20 at once, right? So you don't need to come up with 20 different ideas. Once you get that idea or that video going, it helps you generate some business. You're out on a showing. Think about, okay, let's turn that concept or idea into its own video, and then you can expand upon just thinking through what you do in your day-to-day basis, turn it into videos. But
Yes.
anyways,
Your turn.
thank you so much. Kimberly was in South Chicago. And well, all right, thank you so much, that was great. I'm excited to see all of your new social media posts. Tag Pearson Group in it, we can help you guys reshare it, help you guys go, you know, the whole algorithm. The more people who like it or follow it, and it can hopefully help go viral. And we're always happy to help meet with marketing team, with the social content. We have graphics that you can just post. My hardest thing is to remember to do it, right? How do I remember to do it? So I set reminders for myself. And then just try and stick to those self-reminders as best as possible. That's really, in my opinion, kind of the hardest thing to do to get started. And then you're gonna see some value in it, and then you're gonna be like, oh, okay, great. It's funny, every once in a while I go and post, and then all of a sudden I get some, you know, big client to call me, and I go, that's weird, you know, that's odd. So yeah, try and keep it up. All right, 8.0 contract. Who's read the whole thing, cover to cover? Good, great, good. It's
You should read it.
you absolutely have.
You're using it.
Absolutely have to. It is a interesting changes within our industry that have forced some of these changes, and also just some updates that they've made, probably from some feedback from different situations, arbitration issues, et cetera, et cetera. And we're going to go through some of the major changes today and answer some of the questions, maybe provide you guys with some helpful tips and tricks to be able to tackle when you start starting to use the 8.0 contract.
You what?
Extra copies of the contract by chance?
I don't, there you go.
That's exactly what you should look and see what the changes are.
Okay, thank you.
I tell you what, Tim, would you mind printing, do you have the red line version of the copy of the contract? It's a red line, no, not that one specifically, the red line version of it would be great. How about I email it to you?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
I'm gonna pull the email up right now. I printed off one amendment that I'm gonna hand out to you guys. But I will forward this to you right now. Just the red line version. It was a lot of pages, and I thought I'd try and save some trees today, but it sounds like you guys want to print it.
Is this started already?
It has started, but I actually don't know the official date where the 7.0, I mean, a seller can sign whatever contract. Right, so I don't think there's an end date, but I think they're gonna start to not make it available on the websites anymore after a certain amount of time. And I think that'll be the official transition day where people will have to use it. I think everybody's gonna start to use it more and more.
So when you go to write a contract, is it still 7.0?
No, they're both in there now.
Oh, they're both in there.
Mhm.
The 7.0 is coming off March 1st, I think.
So I would highly recommend doing, starting to use it now, starting it in your practice, because you're obviously eventually gonna have to use it, so you might as well start to use it now. So we're gonna go through this kind of line by line and kind of go over some of the major changes to the contract. The first thing that you guys can see here, that the fixtures and the personal property is removed. It actually hasn't been removed, it's just been changed to later on in the contract, okay? They still have a home warranty section, and there is an alternative energy solar panel section specifically that's at the very end of the contract. I'm not gonna dive too far into that because there are some bigger parts of the contract that we need to talk about. Okay. Purchase price obviously is there, credits, earnest money, balance due at closing, all of that is still there. This, the home warranty section that I showed you was up there, it just moved down to here. This is probably one of the biggest changes to the contract that we need to talk about, okay? You no longer, if you use this, right, it kind of, there's some incentive for you guys to use this right away, and it's because you don't have to do a compensation addendum. Kind of scary that you have to remember to use that compensation addendum, isn't it? It's kind of scary that if you forget it, it's working for free.
Yeah.
It's all incorporated.
Right? So.
Hey, Austin?
Here, it's very helpful that we can't forget, right? So it's basically says, and there's 4 initial spaces here. So the buyers have to initial and the sellers have to initial. Our templates that we create for you on .loop will all have this spelled out, so you can't not miss this section. You have to manually delete it to avoid missing this section, okay? But basically it says seller agrees to pay buyer brokerage a % of purchase price. Now, sounds pretty simple. Move on, right? No, there's a lot to unpack there. And our experience so far of dealing with the addendums and the changes from the MLS's co-op compensation rules where everybody thinks about, right? Oh, is it net or is it gross? Well, there's a seller closing cost credit in there. Doesn't matter. This clause says it's based off of purchase price, period, end of story, no questions asked. You buy a house for $1 million and have a $900,000 closing cost credit, the seller is paying a commission off of $1 million, not $100,000.
Really?
Really?
Sellers aren't like pushing back on this saying.
Oh, they are, but the buyer's brokerage is saying, you signed it. And that's why we need to come up with, from a buyer's standpoint, it's great, move on, right?
Yeah.
Right? From a seller's perspective, when you're representing sellers, there's a couple of things. Buyer's agents are gonna put 2.5%, but guess what? You're getting charged $495 or $395, depending on the purchase price, as a listing fee. You need to pass that through to the buyer's agent, right? I've had some issues where the agents will strike it and add the $395, and then the seller will sign it. But that's not what the buyer sent to you. So you got to make sure that this is correct before it is countersigned by the seller. A lot of people will say, oh, I'll strike it. All you're really doing is countering if you're striking an agreement and signing it, because then they have to go back and initial it. And if they don't, you really don't have an agreement.
Yeah, any change or strike has to be initiated.
But so what I make sure is that everything, it's so funny, when I'm working on the list side, I get a contract, it's never right. There's always something that I get to change. And then multiple offer situation, I pick the best offer. I never sign the first contract that the buyer's agent gave me. It's always, hey, we're gonna take your offer, but you gotta change A, B, C, D, and E in the contract, and then I'll send it to my seller. I don't even do it and send it back to them. I make sure that they do it first. Remember, you got all the cards here, you got the real estate, they want the real estate, and you've pretty much reached a deal. You just gotta make sure that some clerical changes are updated.
What contract is that? The one that I have here, Chicago Association of Realtors.
Okay, so We're printing it off. You'll get a red line version here today. And otherwise, on the Chicago Association of Realtors website, there's the 8.0 multi-board purchase and sale agreement, okay? Now, we'll get into this at the end. There's a bunch of amendments that are tied to, because all the amendments say to be used with X version of the contract. There's a bunch of new amendments that we're gonna go through at the end. So key here, takeaway, if you're working on the list side, to make sure that you're having the buyer's agent update to include any listing fee that you're passing through to them. Or sometimes what we do, if there's a credit, some way for you guys to work this out would be just have them put the exact dollar amount in there, right? Make it easy. It's not, so. Yeah. Right. And say, hey, okay, this is great, this is acceptable, we've got a deal, however, we're only offering, or the seller is offering. Remember, it's the seller that's offering it, not the brokerage, not you as a broker that is offering. So you gotta be clear about that too. It's the seller is only offering that amount.
And in general, on the list side, are sellers acquiescing to that? It depends on the seller.
Acquiescing to the commission?
Yeah.
Well, that is typically laid out in advance in your listing agreement.
Right.
So you should definitely have that conversation with the sellers about the fact that there's a certain amount of this portion of the commission that's going to be allocated to the buyer's brokerage. Right?
Right. Are you getting pushback on that?
Yes. And no, I mean, not really, because I negotiated up front, right? They know how much they're paying, whatever, they know how much it is, they're gonna pay it to the brokerage, whether or not it's to, you know what I mean? And then they've agreed to pay 5%, so no. The problem is from the agent, they'll say, well, my buyer broker agreement says 2.5. I say, great, go get it from the buyer. It's your problem. And I usually tell my seller, look, they're telling they want their counters, they want 2.5%, don't agree to it. And it's done. Right? And it's just drop the head of the snake off early, say no, move on. Anything else? And change the topic. No. Short no, period.
It's amazing how many contracts we get in this office without a broker compensation.
That's great. For us.
Yeah.
That's great for us if they're not attaching agreements.
So on the buy side, go for 2.5%, what your buyer broker agreement should be saying, right? And so if you get pushback from the seller, you can say, the argument from the other side, the pushback that we recommend that you give is, well, my buyer signed a 2.5%. So if the seller isn't paying it, they're paying it, and therefore it factors into the economics of the deal, and they're not going to pay you, the seller, as much. So it either comes from their pocket, it comes from the seller's pocket directly or indirectly. So, this is where the NAR settlement, I don't think they understood what happened. Now they're making us all agree to, negotiate these up front. Great. I negotiate more up front now. As opposed to not agreeing to anything up front and be willing to take whatever they're given.
Right.
Which is typically less.
So in the event that you submit this, I guess two things I'm imagining. The first one is the seller, you ask for a $10,000 credit, and the seller's agent catches it and says, I want you to be paid the 2.5 off of the net amount.
Yes.
We would just use.
You gotta kind of get a little fancy. Yeah, I mean, you use the total amount, but to be honest with you, what you do is add a text box in there. I'm gonna try and put something on our counter signature portion. I mean, you should have the buyer's agent do this. it's their problem. Make it say net. I don't care how it needs to say, but make it say net.
So would you rather, on either side?
We're not
would
doing
you-
it because the buyer's agent is doing it.
But like, let's say we're repping the buyer's agent and they wanna change, should we put 2.5% minus?
I would add a text box in there and I would kind of cross this off and I would say, I would do from this box to the end. And I would say 2.5% of net, and then it says purchase price on the next line.
And then at closing, like, obviously I foresee a bunch of situations where we start to put together the commission, closing statement. And we're like, hey, it should be higher, and the seller disagrees, and they're like, well, now we have a problem with the transaction. Should we fight them over those extra few dollars?
Where is the discrepancy? Sorry, with the.
So
Let's say.
there's a
yeah.
closing cost credit. And the commission is 2.5% of the purchase price, not the closing cost credit. That's a great question, and I haven't seen that come up yet.
So I don't wanna cause problems for my buyer, but
Yeah,
I totally can see a world where we're like a week from closing and the seller, we're upping the buyer, the seller puts in a commission statement, we review it and say, hey, it's actually supposed to be this amount, and they say, now we have a problem with the transaction.
yeah, I mean, there's no agreement between, besides for this contract.
You can't cancel.
Yeah, you
jail
can't,
because of commission.
well, no, an agent can't, but the seller can.
So,
The seller can, but, so this is the only agreement between you and the seller. There is no agreement that says anything about bringing a ready, willing, and able buyer to the table. But at the end of the day, you can also always go to the other agent and say, we brought a ready, willing, and able buyer. You're gonna be canceling this contract in bad faith due to your mistake. This is an agreement that you signed, and this is, we're gonna, record the contract, and you won't not only be able to close you won't be able to close with any other buyer. I don't care if it's now and 30 years, my buyer's gonna own this thing. So you either get the money now and close on it, or whatever.
To work in good faith in Chicago and to build relationships, do you think it's worth at a certain point having either in an email or a conversation with the agent to say, hey, just as a reminder, this is 2.5% of total, or should we just let it quietly happen?
I mean,
Deal with the consequences.
quietly, because you don't want it brought up and canceled and.
Do you,
And-
do you take your contracts before you have the seller sign, say, oh my God, my buyer is getting the best deal in the world, are you sure you wanna sign this? No, you're acting in the best interest of your client.
Yeah,
And so that wouldn't be acting in the best interest of your client.
just thinking about balancing like making the most money I can, including getting paid now on credits, which is awesome,
Mhm.
and also building good relationships and causing smooth closing.
If you made 10 times the amount per transaction, do you think you'd work harder for your clients? If the client didn't have to pay for it?
The answer should be no, but truthfully, if I know I'm making 10 times more, I would. work.
Yeah, you are. So is it in the best?
No, I wouldn't.
So is it in-
Every client
So is it
follow the-
is it in the best? Is it in the best interest of, yeah, everybody would, because we would have more time, and wouldn't have to work on as many transactions to make more money. It's of course, yes, answer.
Yeah.
And so is that in the best interest of your client? Yes. So it is not in the best interest of your client to make sure that you're pointing out the faults.
No, then you're just causing more eyes.
Yeah, what my recommendation would be, or if it were me and how I would handle it is, the way it reads right now is purchase price. The purchase price, not net, there's no net.
It's all
verbiage.
gross unless it's
Correct.
stated in the contract.
And so if someone, if let's say, if someone were to fight me on that or cause an issue. The way I would handle it is calmly say, can you please direct me to where it says in the contract net?
Ask questions,
Ask
negotiation.
So
If you're renegotiating,
Say,
There's a lot of
Yeah.
people don't always get.
Yeah, and I would say, please have the seller specify where he sees that.
Yeah.
Can't do
But,
it.
you know, they
Got
go
it.
after the brokerage for commission.
Yeah,
And
I
then-
think so.
It's not a broker, it's anyone.
Right.
It's
Thinking
the
about
seller, like,
the relationship.
Yeah, and
you know, it's not the broker's.
I think it's the way you handle it, right? So if you just say, please point ask questions to have them figure out their argument is a little weak. And if they can't, and it becomes this issue, say, hey, I wanna get this deal done just as much as you, please talk to your seller to figure this out. And if they say no, then you kinda, you can either feel, I mean, it's a couple $100 at the end of the day for a small commission or concession, it's not like we're losing a ton. So it's kind of up to you if it's worth it, but if it were, my last resort would be going to my buyer and say, hey, I know our relationship. Blah, blah, blah. If I felt confident, I would say, look, I don't like to make my commission part of the deal. We're talking about $200. I would either waive it or, you know, hoping that you make sure that you call me when you sell, that's gonna be your agreement. And they will, or I would say, can you pick up the difference?
I would point the finger to their agent didn't inform them correctly, and they should be, if you're that upset about this, then you should talk to your agent about eating that portion of the commission to make you whole. I gotta keep going here. We got 17 more pages to go. Sorry, one last question here.
No, I was just clarifying, when you're talking about gross and net, so when we're talking about if my buyer offers 200, he's putting 10 down, are we saying commission on 200?
Now, is there a closing cost credit in there or no?
No.
Okay, so then that's the same thing, gross and net are the same, because there's no discount. So if there's a $200,000 purchase price, but they're asking for a $20,000 closing cost credit, it's unfair to ask the seller to pay a commission because they're only getting 180K. They're just using the financing differently to purchase price of 200 and they're getting 20K back. So the seller's only getting 180K. Why are they paying commission on the 200?
Yeah.
So that's the net gross discrepancy. If there's no closing cost, then it's based off the purchase price and it is one and the same. And there is no argument to be had to begin with.
So I'm getting a commission on one.
On the net.
If there was a 20%, right?
Those are what's ready.
No. By default, the contract is written, so it's off the gross, so it's off 200.
Oh,
Unless, so that's what we're saying. If you're working for the seller, you have to get it to address that. You have to get it to correct that, right? The contract needs to correct that. If you're working for the buyer,
Same thing, they might miss it.
all right, let's move on. All right, possession. Make sure you guys read this possession clause here. It is, if there's ever an argument about when you're getting possession, right? But when the seller legally delivers possession to the buyer, it is deemed, when it's deemed you got possession and yada, yada, yada. Here's where the fixtures and personal property section was added back in, and then they have the alternative solar panel section. That's, you know, at the very, 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 very end of the contract. I'm not going to go into it today, but there's a, just besides the point that there's a section there to include it. Financing. All right, so they changed us from a loan contingency to financing contingency. I don't think there's a big difference there, but you're going to see a lot of red line because throughout the contract they used to call it a loan contingency. So from here on out, it's called financing contingency. Now, there's a really interesting change to the financing contingency because it specifically calls out that unless you have a home sale contingency marked off and it's negotiated, this contingency does not apply if the home you're selling can't sell. So I'll give you an example. I own a home. And I'm going to buy another home and there's multiple offers and I don't want to tell them that I have a home sale contingency, but I have a financing contingency. If I don't sell my home, I'm not going to get financing for the other home. So I'm not going to tell them about the home sale contingency because I'm protected. I have a home sale contingency, right? And so all of a sudden their financing falls through and they find out it's because there's a home sale contingency. It's like, why didn't you tell us there's a home sale contingency? There wasn't a home sale contingency. I just didn't get financing because of it. This specifically calls out that you cannot basically cancel your contingency cannot be due to the fact that you have a home set that hasn't sold and the reason for your contingency, the contract to be null and void unless that section is filled out. I think it's a smart addition to the contract to protect sellers. I know that, you know, I have told my clients here and there. Hey, you know, we don't have to put a home sale contingency in there. It's a big thing to negotiate. It's a lot of extra confusion, and you're either gonna sell it and we're gonna close on it, or you're not, right? So it's an interesting change to the contract that you guys have to keep in mind. That if they do need to sell their home before they close, you gotta make sure that you protect your buyers with the home sale contingency. And on the opposite flip side, if a contract is not selling, or the financing gets extended, and you know that the buyers have a home sale that they're working on, you wanna figure out, hey, is this because you haven't closed on your other home? And if that's true, well, you didn't have a home sale contingency in there. So guess what? You forfeit your earnest money. Oh, wait, you just want a 1 week extension? I want you to put up another $35,000 of non-refundable earnest money, or I'm gonna keep the rest of it, and we'll close next week, fine. We'll close next week, but guess what? Does that not guarantee your sellers are gonna close? Does that not guarantee your commission in your pocket? Okay, fine, we'll give them 1 week, it's not that big of a deal. It's better than going back on the market and having to show it and negotiate offers all over again. But ask the buyers on the list side, ask the buyers for more earnest money when they start to stumble or ask for things. It's always a give and take. All right. So then you have the same thing with financing contingency. You have a cash with no mortgage, with no financing contingency, right? It's shortened, not much of a change there. If it's a cash offer, remember, every time you write the offer, we have a templated countersign of the offer, right? However, we cannot template which section to sign. It's either cash or it's financed. So every time you're writing an offer for a buyer, you're gonna have to click and drag in initials for one of these sections, right? Because every time, there's no way for the brokerage or the technology to default or to know inherently what section you are. Okay, homeowners insurance, this was just moved. Flood insurance, this was just moved, not much difference. I think they actually might have pulled out the homeowners insurance. No, I think those are both sections in there before. Prorations, this section here, line 207, they basically added a section to help pre-negotiate a standard industry practice for new construction or a big rehab of the home that developers use. Typically, you're gonna have a developer's contract anyways, but it's good for you guys to understand this. But basically, it's saying, you know, a lot of the times for new construction, the taxes on a plot of land are $1,200 a year. But wait a minute, you just built 57 condos on that plot of land. And so are you saying that my taxes are $24 a year? No, they just haven't been figured out yet, right? And you know, we know Cook County isn't the quickest at doing it all. And so what it typically does is it puts 3% of the purchase price. Why 3%? Does anybody know why 3%? Anybody know why 3%? Do you know on average what the taxes are relative to the purchase price of the property?
3% annually?
It used to be like 1.5 to 2, but it's inching more towards like 2 to 2.5. So that's why it's 3. Held in escrow until the taxes are figured out and then credited to pay the taxes for the time in which the developer owned it, and every dollar amount beyond that gets refunded to the developer, and every dollar that the developer, it's more than that, which is rare, they get this, the developer has to come up with the money to fund their portion of the taxes. That makes sense to everybody? That's a good one. No change to the attorney review. There is an as-is condition. Now, this is really interesting too. Now, anybody ever talk to your client about signing an as-is contingency, right? And it's like, oh, what does it matter? Right? We can always ask them for credits later anyways, right? So who cares?
Well, this specifically says, the first one is as is, and we're not getting an inspection. Alright. Unless you initial line 15B or C, okay? So 15B says you're gonna do an inspection and we have the right to make a request if we find anything that's messed up, right? Section C says we want to do an inspection, but we're not gonna make any requests at the end. I mean, at the end of the day, can you still do it?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can,
But they can
with
say what
the
you said.
threat. But they have a bigger bargaining chip there saying, what you said,
Yeah,
right? And so I used to always do this whenever I had my client sign an as-is contract, say, look, we can always argue the
Yeah.
contract later, but what I also told them on this list side, when they sent me a contract that's as is, I used to have to, on top of it, add something like this in my conversation with the buyer's agent to say, now, I don't wanna hear from you in a couple of weeks after this inspection is done. Right? And if I do, we're gonna have some problems and you're gonna act in bad faith. So I had to kind of say that. This clarifies it a little bit, but at the end of the day, what if you found out that there's a sinkhole under the property? Well, you're probably gonna cancel it, right? But what happens if there's buying it for $200,000, there's $100,000 repair that you could fix the sinkhole? I would still buy it as long as it wasn't anything too scary, right? But, you know, I want you to fix that $100,000 credit or else we're gonna move on, right? So at the end of the day, you can still ask them, right? But you gotta pretty much say, look, you gotta be pretty confident when you go to ask them to back it up with, or, you know, we're gonna cancel, right? Or we're gonna cancel. And so there's not a lot of buyers that really want you to threaten that. Most of my attorneys' letters, when they ask for credits, say specifically, this does not constitute as a cancellation if the buyer does not agree to it. But this clause here says, if you request a credit, the seller has the right to terminate. So that's the difference, yes.
I spoke with an attorney, who told me that as is in the previous one, if you add or something, that we will technically better say it's better.
You know, I have an attorney that'll say, you know, there's always attorneys that say opposite things. I agree, but at the same time, no, look, I just told you right here, you can still ask for requests, right? Like, yeah, it'll be a breach of contract and they can terminate, yeah, but it's mutual cancellation and everything. So like, at the end of the day, is that clause still there? It's to prevent that from happening and should be more clear up front. It is what it is, you know, at the end of the day, it's as things shake out in the deal and due diligence gets figured out, no matter how much you set up front about, oh, I blah, 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 blah. I promise I won't do it. If they find something out materially changing the structure of the deal, and then again, it's always up to the seller. I always say this, I had a seller back up early on in my career. I had a seller back out of a contract like a day before closing because they got cold feet for no reason at all. What are you gonna do? I'm gonna threaten to record that contract. I'm gonna tell the buyer to record the contract. The guy's been there for 15 years. He's not moving anywhere. He doesn't care. Like, you know, you can force that, argue that all day. The buyer's not gonna buy that now. He already bought something else. He probably moved 3 times since then, right? But like, at the end of the day, it's the seller kind of holds all out of cards at the end of the day anyways. So you really gotta keep making sure that people wanna stay on track to close this thing. Cause if one of them doesn't matter what any of this says, it's not gonna close.
Just a quick question, so if we're in a position where they do as is with an inspection, no requests, very specifically, we do the inspection, we find some significant issues with the unit. We say, hey, because of the inspection, we're gonna walk away. Between you and I, you know, if these are remedied or there's a credit to offset them, my client would stay at the table. Otherwise, we're gonna walk away. Especially if we put it in writing rather than a conversation.
Sure.
Is there a world where the seller can reject to return earnest money because we
No.
are canceling? Because attorney review, no matter the reason, we have the ability to cancel the contract, right? There's no world in which the buyer's earnest money will get stopped.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the
Yeah.
seller doesn't have to sign it.
Yeah, but I think.
He doesn't like the way you smelled today. He doesn't want to sign it.
Could the seller say, like, there's clearly written probable cause that you are canceling this contract due to.
Like bad faith or something.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, they could do, I mean, they can make up anything, this clause or any other clause, they could say, no, I'm gonna keep your earnest money. It's not in their best interest, and you'd think that their broker would advise them otherwise, cause they're gonna get sued, they're gonna lose. They're gonna pay their attorney and our attorney and give me the money back, and it's gonna be a big headache.
Yeah, I guess maybe a good way that I'm thinking about preemptively wording this is saying like, based on these findings, my client is gonna walk away. If your client wants to offer any opportunity to keep them at the table, such as X, Y, Z, you can, but at the end of the day, we can't.
You don't have to structure it with, we're gonna walk away first, you can say, look, I know we said no request, but we found an issue and. You know, I know that they have the right to cancel.
Yeah.
And the big thing is that if there's a better offer on the table that's come after you, they have the right to then cancel because you asked for that request. That's the big thing.
Yeah.
Is that they have the right to cancel because you asked for it. Now, if another offer comes in, so to just keep that in mind. Yeah.
If the same
Yeah.
things are, we found the buyer that if the buyer notifies the seller within 5 days, the contract's
Yeah, read
Yeah.
it, it's really
Yeah.
good, you
Yeah.
really need to understand it, there's more than what I'm saying, for sure. There's some time periods, and there's also something that I wanna talk about real quick, and then I wanna break for lunch, we can finish going over this, there's not that much more. But there's an interesting clause about the direction for the escrowee. And I think that this is created based on earnest money not getting returned by the sellers or by the buyers not signing it. So what happens is it says that if the brokerage is the holder of escrow funds, they have the ability. What section is this? 27. They have the ability to give notice to both parties with 14 days notice of what they're gonna do with the earnest money, and if nobody objects, they can do it. Right, because if the seller's not responding and run away and they sometimes get pissed off the agents or and they just stop responding, stop even opening their emails, not realizing that they need to sign something. Well, the brokers can say, all right, I'm gonna send this back unless you let me know otherwise. And again, they're not answering and if they don't respond, guess what happens is they can just do it. So it's helpful from us from an operation standpoint to be able to get and have everybody move on. We don't want to waste our time. The more time we waste on non-transactional stuff means the less time we can spend on transactions, means the less money we make per transaction. So what they're trying to do in this instance is trying to help us make more money per transaction. Grab some food. If you guys want to stay here, I'm gonna keep going through. If you want to eat while I finish up, but we'll break for 10 minutes. And I don't think there's much else to really go into, but we can go over asking questions and see if there's anything else. Oh, and we'll go over the amendments too at the end.
Have a contract, a backup offer that's legal.
Would you ever, yeah, exactly. Would you ever recommend that your seller,
Yeah.
would you ever recommend that your seller signs that anyways? No, because if the first buyer falls through,
we're gonna go back to all the buyers.
Right. Right.
Is that better? We got it back? All right. Cool.
Okay, the alternative energy thing, this is actually something that I've been interested in. So if you have solar panels and you have a contract or whatever, this moves that contract over to the buyer.
Yeah, it's a way to help standardize the negotiation of the sale of the solar panels if they're not completely owned by the buyer, because some of them are,
Right.
they have
Yeah.
leases and yeah, it's a way to, fill in the blank for the remainder of the payments or partial payments or renting it or whatever, so.
Okay.
We don't see a ton of it in our market, but I think we're gonna start to see.
big problem
We'll see
around
more.
the country with real estate
Yeah.
closing, with these contracts that are liens on the property.
Yeah.
It's good to have, for sure.
Yeah, it is good to
It's
have.
good to have.
I would agree.
And when you do come across it, it's good for you to be able to represent your client, whether buyer or seller, by addressing this issue in the right fashion.
Yeah.
Instead of them having a surprise at the end of it.
It depends on how old they are, it depends on what the deal is that you have.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, if they're owned outright, I think they are valued, if they're not, then I think.
They only last
Right.
like 15 years.
20, yeah, 15, 20.
So if it costs X, and you're saving X, then it's.
Oh, I
fine.
see.
But if you're selling the house in 2 years, you don't have to sell it, because you're gonna get it back and not bother the new buyer.
In the early part of Trump's first administration, solar panels were incredibly cheap.
Yeah.
And
And they were kidding.
Yeah.
well, you don't know that.
Yeah, I mean.
They were cheap.
Not
The,
as
the
good.
problem, they were not cheap, like made wise, they were inexpensive. But I think there was a tariff put on in Trump's first administration that drastically increased the price of solar panels, and it changed a lot of the economics of the deal. And I haven't really looked into it since that happened, and I think it's been there ever since. I don't know if any of that's changed since then, or even within the last couple of weeks. But yeah, that was kind of my understanding of it. In our market, it may not make as much sense. There's other things that you have to get too, which is like a battery to store the power. So you get like the test the power wall,
Right.
which is cool.
But there's a thing about who gets credits, tax credits.
Well,
The person.
I think the first person I don't think those are.
Those are passed on.
Well, some of it is like, some of it's annual, it depends, yeah. I don't think they transfer.
Yeah.
I
think it's pretty
Cost.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep going here. Again, this possession after closing, there's not a change here. But keep in mind, if you remember early on in the contract, we talked
Yeah.
about the clause that clarified what possession means. And then when you get to the end of the contract, remember they have the miscellaneous provisions? Well, we started to write commission addendums, but it was never a checkbox in there. So what we ended up doing is our template to countersign on for buyers agreements on the 7.0 hand filled in the other section of section 38. It hand filled in line 693 to say that we are including a commission addendum. That protected all of our agents here, because if you guys forgot,
Yeah.
it says, you signed something saying there's a commission addendum attached, where is it? Right, so it was a way to protect ourselves. Now it's built into the contract, we don't have to have that checkbox.
Yeah.
But that being said, there are several attachments, contract addendums in section 37 that are different from miscellaneous provisions in section 38 that we're gonna go into and talk about later. Okay, so pretty easy to go over. Everybody's familiar with an appraisal gap addendum. Is everybody familiar with that? Okay, well, there's a new one that is tied to this 8.0 contract. I don't know, I don't think there's any major changes to it, but it's one that addresses that the 8.0 contract, it is an addendum to the 8.0 contract. Make sure you check this section. It is very prevalent in a low inventory market. When you're going up against multiple offers that your buyers, I highly recommend that you have your buyers do this. I put in an offer on a house and I lost out on it a couple of months ago. And they kind of laughed at me and I was like, what did I do wrong? They're like, no, all these other ones had appraisal gap addendums and everything. And I'm like, okay, easy does it, right? You are an agent in a market where you get 45 offers per house that you sell. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's not common. So anyways, multi-unit addendum, short sale addendum, there's a new short sale addendum, you need a short sale addendum. Not only on the listing, on the purchase and sale agreement, you need a short sale agreement on the listing agreement too. Because if you bring a ready, willing, and able buyer to a seller. And the bank doesn't release it, does the seller still owe you earnest money or commission? No, they don't. So legally, we have to have short sale addendums on listing agreements too.
Not only that, if you. You're listing, we get a buyer's contract in a short sale. And you forget the short sale rider, and you sign the contract and the bank says, no, I'm not gonna do the short sale.
The seller is legally required to sell it.
What short sale, there's no addendum. So the seller is legally, here was in this business. You start to sell the person the house. So if you owe 500 and the short sale contract's at 300, you start to sell the house at 300 and you still owe. It's a big issue. A lot of lawsuits. So the short sale addendum says that the lender doesn't approve the contracts. So very important.
But most listings, they start with, it's not a short sale, it's, just a little bit above what they owe, but then the offers come in, then it's.
I realize it's short, and then it changes, right?
Right.
Which is tricky too. And then we also have, this is one of the things that I want to go over, if you guys wouldn't mind. Can you take one and pass it around? Or get back here too. There is an amendment notice and response form that works for a lot of different situations and is a nice form for us. I think what was happening is a lot of agents were writing cancellations or expirations of contingencies, and they're practicing law without a license. And this is something to help us be able to fill in the blanks for different situations. Inability to satisfy a contingency or a request for an extension. Don't attorneys do that? I highly recommend to still have the attorney do that. That is their job, right? But I had a client the other day that said, I don't want to use an attorney. And I said, I don't want to use you. I don't want you to use me, I mean. But I require my clients to use an attorney. I don't care. I'm not doing, okay, fine, then pay me extra. Well, that's the whole point. I don't want to have to pay anybody. Well, I'm not going to do his job because you don't want to pay somebody for it. Well, I'll do it. All right, fine. Send me a executed deed because I got to send it to the buyer. Right? Well, wait a minute here. Well, I'm going to have the title company do that. Fuck. They don't want to do somebody else's job either because they're not quoting you for that scope of work. So some of this stuff in here is helpful. I don't usually recommend doing it, but if you need it, to lay some of this stuff out and to avoid you guys from having to practice law without a license, there are some things in here like extension request, basically notice of the sale or closing of the buyer's real estate if there's a home sale contingency in there of the buyer's real estate, a closing amendment or a change to the credit, an amendment to the credit at closing. Pretty cool, huh?
You, that, it's.
Everything's negotiable, so now we have to have a good paperwork. The backup organization.
It's a contract, you know, there's a lot of legalese on it, complicated, how do you present this to your, buyer? Or you say like, oh, just initial here, or you explain everything?
Yeah, I send it to them and say, let's walk through this, and I give them the high level approach of, this is generally what this meeting, this is generally what you're agreeing to. And I'll go into the high level terms, and usually preface by saying I'm not an attorney. But I have a couple of really great attorney recommendations, and they'd be happy to jump on the phone with you before you even get under contract, and they're gonna be happy to represent you during closing, so you're protected the whole thing. But I can say like, I can generally, without, being an attorney, give you a vague idea. What you're planning.
There you go. Join us, and there we go.
Because of course, I'm trying to client in 5 minutes. They're gonna get that closing, and they know that, so you build your attorney relationship and say, why don't you hop on the phone with my attorney for a few minutes, ask what we thought. It's a great touch point.
I don't love getting the attorney involved beforehand. I always offer it if they start to ask about it. I usually say, before we start going through this contract, I want you to skip everything and go to the attorney review section and say your attorney's gonna have the ability to review this after the fact, is usually what I say. And then I said, if attorneys reviewed all land contracts before closings, there would be 4 property owners in the United States of America, and we would be negotiating the Louisiana Purchase. So.
I like, so it's everything, as long as it's all subject to the attorney.
I start there. Say, hey, just to start, it's all subject to the attorney. If you want to talk to the attorney about beforehand, go for it, but this is the standard City of Chicago contract, this agent and this is all we write our contracts on. And it's only fill in the blanks, and I'm gonna go through all the fill in the blanks. Right, and then it's usually gonna have to do it for a first-time home buyer. You know what's crazy is you usually have to do it once for a first-time home buyer, and then when they miss out on the contract, then the 50 other contracts they fill out, they're like,
Oh, it's just.
I didn't want to talk about it.
yeah. And sellers too, sometimes the sellers, first-time home sellers, have to be walked through it a little bit or a little bit slow. But it's funny is they've been through it, they've seen it, they're like, oh yeah, my attorney later on can always get out of it. And they keep their eye on a couple of things, if they're second-time home buyers, or if they, knowing about real estate and their concerns, they keep their eye on a couple of things that happened in the past transaction. And then the sellers will kind of do the same thing too.
Both sides, I say, we have general terms. Feel comfortable signing the contract, because you're in a attorney review, attorney review, everything is changed.
There's major terms, right?
And that
And
makes them feel.
in a commercial agreement, you really have an LOI, and then everything else in that contract, they don't even look at, right? Because you're only coming out to LOI. And so once you've gone through the contract, it's really kind of teaching them about the process. Because a lot of the terms of the contract are just about the process. Like, look, if you can't get homeowners insurance, they're not gonna force you to buy this thing, right? If it's in a flood zone, they're not gonna force you to spend $10,000 a month on flood insurance.
Right.
So those are just general process things that they have to be walked through for the first time. But otherwise, you're generally saying, hey, got a contract, seller, here's the summary, price, earnest money, close date, contingency date, and that's it. And that's generally what they want to know. What I usually do from the seller side, since they've bought something before, hopefully, they haven't inherited it, if they inherited it and then they're figuring out, it's a different story. But here's the terms, here's the summary, read it over. When you get a chance to review it, then call me. And I sit there, I obviously have my seller's phone number plugged into my phone, so I know it's them calling. And I generally just let them get to it when they get a chance, and then they call you, and then they ask you questions. Makes it a little bit easier on the sell side, and it gives them at their kind of own pace. And if they don't answer it by a certain reasonable time, I'll start calling them to be like, hey, did you get a chance to review? So it's usually, and then my summary is really all they should be concerned about.
I'm gonna go over everything that applies to this transaction.
Okay. This
It's not-
amendment, notice and response form is made a part and corporate, you know, tell them to read it, you know, and if they need help. If they really wanna go through everything with a fine tooth comb, I'm not gonna sit around while they read word for word what the contract says. But usually some of my, my recommendations, now when you're working with the buyer. Is it a good idea to send them a blank contract before you guys go out? Say you can read this, you know, hey, we're starting to hone in on some offers, you guys think about it tonight, but here's the blank contract. We're gonna fill this all in, I'll walk you through it, but I want it in your hands. So you guys, if you wanna read through what it says ahead of time, you know, you do that. And it makes it so you don't have to literally read the contract with them. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll do the same thing on the buy side. I'll say, hey, I put together the major terms that we talked about. They're all in this contract. I want you to read through this, see where I put the certain terms, see what it says in certain situations. When you've had a chance to read it, and call me when you're done. And then if they literally don't read it, then you'd be like, all right, great. And usually those are the type of people, right? You either have the person with one email in their inbox and they can't go to sleep without reading it and archiving it or deleting it. And the person with 10 billion emails in their inbox and they didn't even know that you sent it. Right? And that type of person is like, all right, cool. Am I good? Right? When you signed the disclosure for your gym that you signed up at, did you read it? No, you didn't. All right, I hope this helps, guys. If you guys have any questions, any problems arise in the middle of the transaction, let me know. We're gonna share our update. We're gonna customize our 8.0 countersign for signing for buyers or fill in the blank template and .loop for buyers and for sellers to include some helpful things so that you guys will help you remember some of the key points, depending on what we want to represent our clients in the best interest of them that are on top of this. We'll let you know when that's done. There is right now, if you want to use it, I believe in .loop, an 8.0 counter signature and signature template if you want to start using it today. But we'll let you know when we've created our own custom one, which should be done in the next couple of days, if not tomorrow.